The conference room smelled like expensive leather and the kind of coffee that comes in French presses. I sat across from Madeline Caldwell, watching her annotate the third revision of our joint venture agreement with the same meticulous precision she brought to everything. Her handwriting was architectural, each letter a deliberate structure. Section 4.3 needs refinement, she said, not looking up. The liability cascade isn't clean. I nodded, though I only half understood. That was why I'd hired her. Madeline wasn't just my financial advisor, she was the person who'd taken my inheritance from my father's manufacturing business and transformed it into something that actually generated wealth. Real wealth. The kind that compounded. Whatever you think is best, I said. She glanced up then, her expression unreadable behind tortoiseshell glasses. Grace, you should understand these mechanisms. This is your capital. That's why I pay you. A flicker of something crossed her face. Disappointment, maybe, or calculation. Yes, you do. My phone buzzed, a text from Justin. Running late. Client dinner went long. Love you. I smiled reflexively. Justin McIntyre was chronically late, chronically apologetic, and chronically charming enough that I forgave him. 3 years together, and I still felt that small flutter when his name appeared on my screen. Everything all right? Madeline asked. Justin's working late again. He works very hard. Her tone was neutral, professional, the tone she used for observable facts. He does. The promotion to senior analyst has been brutal on his schedule. Madeline returned to the contract, her pen moving with surgical precision. Brutal schedules require excellent support systems. I wasn't sure if she meant me or herself. Madeline had been handling Justin's portfolio too, a small personal account he'd opened 6 months ago. Professional courtesy, she'd said. Friends and family rate. I'd been grateful. It meant, though, 2 most important financial relationships in my life were coordinated, streamlined, efficient. I'll have the revisions ready by Friday, Madeline said, gathering papers into a leather portfolio that probably cost more than my car payment. We should discuss the Beaumont Trust distribution before quarter end. The what? She paused. The trust your father established, the one that vests next month. I felt that familiar wash of inadequacy. My father had died when I was 23, leaving me a labyrinth of trusts, LLCs, and investment vehicles I still didn't fully comprehend at 31. Madeline had been navigating that labyrinth for me for 4 years. Right, yes, Friday works. She stood, smoothing her skirt with one hand. Everything about Madeline was smooth. Her movements, her voice, her ability to make complex financial instruments sound like natural law. Grace, she paused at the door. You're not inadequate. You're simply trusting someone competent. That's wisdom, not weakness. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they felt like being read. I watched her leave, then turned back to my laptop where I'd been drafting marketing copy for a boutique furniture company. My actual job, the one that paid for my life, while my inheritance paid for my future. The work felt small next to Madeline's spreadsheets and legal instruments, but it was mine. I understood it. My phone buzzed again. Justin, make it up to you this weekend. That place in Sonoma you've been wanting to try? I typed back, perfect, miss you? His response came immediately. Miss you more. Working on something big. Tell you soon. I smiled. Justin was always working on something big. That was part of his charm, the perpetual optimism, the belief that the next deal, the next client, the next strategy would be the breakthrough. I loved that about him, his certainty. The apartment felt too quiet when I got home that evening. Justin's things were scattered in their usual places, running shoes by the door, laptop chargers snaking across the kitchen counter, a half-empty water bottle on the coffee table. Evidence of habitation without presence. I poured wine and opened my personal email, mostly ignoring the inbox in favor of scrolling mindlessly. Then I saw it. A message from Madeline's office, sent at 7:47 p.m. Subject: Q4 Portfolio Review. Final documents. I clicked. 3 PDFs, each labeled with clinical precision. Grace Ashford _ portfolio summary _ Q4. Grace Ashford _ trust distribution _ analysis. Grace Ashford _ joint venture _ amendment _ final. I opened the joint venture amendment first, skimming the dense legal language. My eyes caught on a phrase in section 4.3, the one Madeline had been annotating. In the event of default by primary investor, Ashford, administrative authority, transfers to secondary advisor, Caldwell, with full discretionary powers over asset liquidation and reinvestment. I read it again, then again. Probably meant something technical, something normal. I flagged it mentally to ask about on Friday. The second document was the trust analysis. Pages of projections, tax implications, distribution schedules. I skimmed until I hit a footnote on page 7. Note: beneficiary consultation with J. McIntyre recommended tax-advantaged reinvestment vehicles. Coordination suggested for optimal structure. J. McIntyre: Justin, why would my trust distribution require coordination with Justin's investments? I opened my text thread with him. Hey, quick question. Did Madeline mention anything about coordinating our accounts for tax stuff? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Yeah, she had some ideas about timing, smart stuff. We can talk this weekend? Sure, just curious. Trust me, babe, she knows what she's doing. I did trust him. And I trusted Madeline. That was the foundation of everything. I closed the laptop and went to bed in the empty, apartment, Justin's pillow still smelling faintly of his cologne. Friday's meeting was in Madeline's office, a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the financial district. The view was a statement. Look how high we've climbed. The Beaumont Trust vests on the 15th, Madeline said, sliding a bound presentation across her glass desk. Approximately $1.2 million post-tax. The number still felt abstract. Monopoly money. And you recommend? Reinvestment through the existing joint venture structure. It gives you better liability protection and tax efficiency. She opened to a flow chart that looked like a subway map. But there's a timing consideration. The coordination with Justin's account? Her pen paused for a fraction of a second. Yes, he's opening a position in a limited partnership that has a minimum threshold. If you commit part of your distribution, you both benefit from institutional rate fees. Why didn't he mention this? He wanted me to explain the mechanics. It's complex. She smiled, a professional smile calibrated. He's very protective of not pressuring you about money. That sounded like Justin. Careful about boundaries, especially around my inheritance. He'd never asked me for anything, never even hinted at expectations. How much would I need to commit? $300,000 minimum, but the projected returns over 5 years are substantial. She showed me a graph, arrows trending upward in a way that looked both scientific and inevitable. I need to think about it. Of course. Madeline closed the presentation. Though the partnership closes enrollment in 2 weeks. After that, the opportunity's gone. I felt that familiar pressure, the sense that financial decisions existed in a universe where hesitation cost money. Can I see the partnership documents? Absolutely. I'll send them tonight. She made a note in her leather-bound planner. Grace, I know this feels overwhelming, but that's exactly why you have professional guidance. You don't have to understand every mechanism. You need to trust the architecture. The word hung in the air, architecture, structure, the illusion that complexity was the same as security. I do trust you, I said, and meant it. Good, because trust is the only way this works. The partnership documents arrived at 11:34 p.m., 63 pages of legal language that felt designed to be incomprehensible. I made it to page 12 before my eyes glazed over. Justin came home at midnight smelling like whiskey and expensive steak. "Client dinner?" I asked from the couch. "Brutal." He collapsed next to me, loosening his tie. "But productive. I think we landed them." "That's great." I showed him my laptop. Madeline sent the partnership docs. His expression shifted, subtle, but I'd learned to read his micro expressions over 3 years. Surprise? Discomfort? "You don't have to read all that," he said. "That's what we pay her for. She mentioned I'd need to commit $300,000. Only if you want to. No pressure, Grace, seriously." He took my hand. "I know mixing money and relationships is complicated." "Is it mixing? I thought this was just smart investing." "It is, but I don't want you to feel obligated." He kissed my forehead. "Whatever you decide, I support you." The words were right. The tone was right. But something in the choreography felt rehearsed. "Did you and Madeline discuss this a lot?" I asked. "The coordination." She explained the benefits. Why? "Just seems like a lot of back and forth for something that's supposed to be my decision." Justin pulled back slightly. "Grace, she's your advisor. Of course she's thorough. That's literally what you pay her for." "I know, I didn't know how to articulate the unease. I want to understand it myself." "Then read the documents, ask questions. Madeline will walk you through every line if you want." He stood, heading toward the bedroom. "I'm going to shower. Long day." I listened to the water run and opened my email, scrolling back through months of correspondence with Madeline. Client updates, portfolio reviews, meeting confirmations. Then I saw it, buried in a thread from August, a message with an attachment labeled JAM_personal account _projections.pdf JAM Justin Anthony McIntyre. I clicked. The attachment wouldn't open, permission denied, but the email preview showed a fragment of text. "Revised distribution schedule assuming GA commitment of $300,000 by Q4. Accelerated vesting structure allows for *GA Grace Ashford." This was from August, 3 months before Madeline had mentioned the partnership opportunity to me. I sat very still, trying to understand what I was looking at. Planning wasn't deception. Advisors planned. That was their job. But why was my commitment assumed in Justin's projections 3 months before anyone asked me? I closed the laptop and went to bed, listening to Justin breathe beside me in the dark. Monday morning, I called Madeline's office. "I have some questions about the partnership timeline," I said when she answered. "Of course. Want to come in?" "Can we do it over the phone? I'm on deadline for a client." A pause. "Sure. What's the question?" "When did you first start planning the coordination between my trust distribution and Justin's partnership?" Silence. Then, "Planning and presenting are different timelines, Grace. I analyze opportunities months in advance. That's due diligence." But Justin's projections from August assumed my participation. Projections explore scenarios. That's not the same as commitment. Her voice was still smooth, but there was a new quality, guardedness. "Is something bothering you?" "I just want to understand the sequence." "The sequence is I identified an opportunity, analyzed the benefits, and presented it to both of you when it became actionable. That's my job." Did you it to Justin first?" "I presented different aspects to different clients based on their portfolio needs. Justin's account required earlier discussion due to his investment timeline. Each word was carefully placed like tiles in a mosaic. Grace, where is this coming from? I'm trying to understand my own financial situation. Then let's schedule a comprehensive review. But I need to be clear. If you're uncomfortable with professional coordination between accounts, we can structure things completely separately. It just won't be as efficient. The offer sounded reasonable. The tone felt like a threat. I'll think about it, I said. Don't think too long. The partnership deadline is real. I hung up and sat at my desk, staring at marketing copy about sustainable furniture. The words blurred. That night, Justin brought home takeout and flowers. Madeline called, he said, setting containers on the kitchen counter. She said you seemed stressed about the partnership. She called you about my concerns? She's concerned about you. He unpacked pad thai, his movements casual. Grace, if you don't want to do this, don't. But don't create a conspiracy where there isn't one. I'm not creating anything. I'm asking questions. Questions that sound like accusations. He stopped, meeting my eyes. I love you. Madeline is helping us build financial security. Those two facts aren't contradictory. Then why does it feel choreographed? Because you're looking for patterns that aren't there. He softened, moving closer. Baby, I know your dad's death left you with this complicated financial legacy. I know you feel out of your depth. But that's exactly why you hired someone competent. Trust isn't the same as ignorance. The argument was logical. The delivery was tender. But I felt like I was being managed. I want to see all the communications, I said. Everything you and Madeline have discussed about my accounts. Justin's expression hardened. That's my personal portfolio correspondence. About my money. About coordination that benefits both of us. But if you can't trust me, then maybe we have bigger problems than investment strategy. The sentence landed like a door closing. I didn't say I don't trust you. You're acting like it. He grabbed his keys. I need some air. He left. The pad thai congealed on the counter. I opened my laptop and searched my email for every message from Madeline. Then I created a spreadsheet, logging dates, subjects, attachments. A pattern emerged. Every time Madeline sent me a portfolio update, she sent Justin a message within 48 hours. The timing was too consistent to be coincidence. When I'd traveled to visit my sister in Portland in July, Madeline had sent Justin 3 emails in 5 days. When I'd been sick with flu in September, missing 2 scheduled meetings, Madeline had sent Justin a message titled Rescheduling Strategy. Strategy for what? Rescheduling meetings? Opened my financial accounts, the ones Madeline managed. Everything looked normal, numbers I didn't fully understand, but numbers that had always grown. Then I noticed something in my joint venture account. A transfer authorization form I'd signed in June, granting Madeline discretionary power to rebalance assets within approved investment vehicles. I didn't remember signing it. I searched my email. No record of that form being sent to me. I checked my file cabinet, the accordion folder where I kept important documents. There it was, tucked between tax returns, a form with my signature, dated June 12th. I definitely didn't remember June 12th. My phone rang. Madeline. Grace, I think we need to meet in person. I'm reviewing documents right now. I know, that's why we need to talk. A pause. I can explain everything, but not over the phone. Tomorrow, I said. Tonight would be better. Tomorrow. I hung up and kept searching. In the back of my file cabinet behind old tax returns and college transcripts, I found a manila envelope I didn't recognize. Inside were photocopies of forms I'd supposedly signed over the past 4 years. Investment authorizations, fee agreements, liability waivers. I didn't remember signing most of them. Some had dates when I would have been traveling or sick or dealing with family emergencies. Days when I might have signed something quickly without reading it carefully. Days when I trusted Madeline to handle the details. I spread the forms across my dining table and started taking photographs with my phone, documenting everything. The next morning, I went to Madeline's office without telling Justin. She was waiting, her desk clear except for a single folder. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I know you're concerned. I want to know why there's a signed form in my files that I don't remember signing." Madeline opened the folder, showing me a copy of the same form. "You signed it during our June 12th meeting. We discussed rebalancing protocols. I don't remember that meeting. You were distracted. Justin had just told you about his mother's diagnosis." She showed me her calendar, June 12th, 2 p.m., Grace Ashford, portfolio review. "You asked to keep the meeting short. We covered the essential authorizations and deferred the detailed discussion." I tried to remember June 12th. Justin's mother had been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. I'd been upset, unfocused. Why didn't we have the detailed discussion later? "You never asked to reschedule it, and the authorization was standard. It's in every client portfolio. It just allows me to do my job efficiently. Logical, reasonable." But I felt like I was being given puzzle pieces that fit together too perfectly. "I want copies of every document I've ever signed with you." "Of course." She didn't hesitate. "I'll have them couriered today." "Grace, I understand you're feeling uncertain, but uncertainty is exactly what you're paying me to manage. If you want to terminate our arrangement, you can, but you should know that extracting from our joint venture mid-year will trigger significant tax penalties." "How significant?" "Approximately 30% of your current principal." I felt the walls of the room contract. "And the partnership Justin wants me to join." "Closes in 10 days. After that, the opportunity's gone." She leaned forward, her expression sympathetic. "I know this feels overwhelming, but that's the nature of sophisticated financial management. Complexity creates protection. Trust creates opportunity. What if I just want simple?" Simple means accessible to everyone, including litigation, divorce settlements, creditors. "Your father built you a fortress. I'm maintaining it." I thought about my father, who died of a heart attack in his office, surrounded by paperwork I'd never understand. He'd trusted advisors, too. "I need time," I said. "Time is a luxury position. Most people don't have it." She stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "I'll send those documents. In the meantime, I'd suggest having a serious conversation with Justin. Whatever suspicions you're developing, they're damaging your relationship." I left her office feeling more confused than when I'd arrived. Outside, the financial district bustled with people in expensive suits carrying briefcases full of complexity. Everyone looked confident, purposeful, like they understood the systems they moved through. I wondered how many of them were just pretending. The documents arrived that afternoon by courier. A leather portfolio containing 47 signed forms spanning 4 years, each organized with tab dividers and cross-referenced to account numbers. The organization itself was a message. See how thorough I am? See how professional? I started reading, taking notes, building a timeline on a legal pad. Most were mundane: account openings, investment authorizations, fee, agreements that increased Madeline's percentage as my assets grew. But 3 stood out. The first was from my initial onboarding in 2021, establishing Madeline as my primary advisor with broad discretionary powers over asset management. I remembered signing it, remembered the lawyer my father's friend had recommended explaining that this was standard language. The second was the June form, granting rebalancing authority. The one signed on the day Justin told me about his mother's cancer. The third was from October, last month, an amendment to the joint venture agreement changing the succession structure. If I became incapacitated or unable to fulfill fiduciary duties, Madeline would assume complete control with authority to appoint a successor manager. The successor manager slot was blank, but there was a notation in small print. To be designated pending final partnership structure. I read it 5 times, each time feeling colder. Then I called a lawyer, not one of Madeline's contacts, someone I found through a college friend who'd mentioned her cousin practiced fiduciary law, a woman named Sophia Whitman who had an office in a modest building far from the financial district. I need someone to review my financial advisory agreements, I said when I reached her. Confidentially. How soon? Today, if possible. I can pay whatever it costs. Can you come to my office in an hour? Sophia's office was nothing like Madeline's. No floor-to-ceiling windows, no leather furniture, just a desk piled with case files and a bookshelf crammed with legal texts. But when she looked at me, I felt seen in a way that had nothing to do with being read. "Tell me what's happening," she said. I showed her everything. The forms, the timeline, the email fragments, the coordination between my and Justin's accounts. Sophia spent 40 minutes reading in silence, occasionally making notes in a legal pad with handwriting as messy as Madeline's was perfect. Finally, she looked up. "Who referred you to this advisor?" "A friend of my father's. She managed some of his accounts before he died." "And your boyfriend uses her too?" "Yes. Is that a problem?" Sophia chose her words carefully. "It's not illegal, but it creates potential conflicts of interest, especially given these coordination mechanisms." She tapped the October amendment. "This succession structure is unusual. Typically, you designate a family member or institutional trustee, not your advisor." Madeline said it was for protection. Protection for whom? Sophia pulled out the June rebalancing authorization. "And this is broader than standard. It gives her authority to move assets between vehicles without your explicit approval for each transaction." My throat tightened. That sounds bad. "It's not inherently illegal. But combined with the succession structure and the coordination with your boyfriend's accounts," she paused. "Have you verified that your assets are actually where she says they are?" The question felt like falling. How would I do that? Request independent verification from the actual custodial institutions, not through her, directly. Sophia wrote down 3 names on her legal pad, tore off the page, and handed it to me. "These are forensic accountants who specialize in fiduciary review. They can audit your actual holdings against her reported positions." "You think she's stealing from me?" "I think you've given someone extraordinary power over your wealth, and you don't understand the mechanisms well enough to verify whether that power is being used in your interest." She softened. "That's not a criticism, Grace. This is deliberately complex. That's part of the design." Design? Opacity as protection. For someone. The question is whether it's protecting you or protecting her ability to act without oversight. I thought about Madeline's smooth explanations, the architectural precision of her documents, the way every question I asked led to answers that created more questions. What do I do? First, don't let her know you're investigating. Second, request documentation directly from custodial institutions where your accounts are actually held. Third, do not sign anything else until you have independent verification of your actual asset position. Sophia handed me her card. And fourth, consider that someone who coordinates financial strategies with your romantic partner has leverage in multiple dimensions of your life. I went home and threw up, not dramatically, just quietly in my bathroom, my body rejecting what my mind was trying to process. Justin's toothbrush sat in the holder next to mine, his razor on the shelf, all the small intimacies of shared life. Had Madeline been using those intimacies? Had Justin? I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was pale, eyes red-rimmed, I looked like someone who'd discovered something but didn't yet know what it meant. That night, Justin came home with apologies and takeout from my favorite Thai place. "I'm sorry about last night," he said, unpacking containers. "I shouldn't have stormed out." "It's okay." "It's not, I just—" He paused, looking genuinely troubled. "I hate fighting with you. I hate feeling like there's distance between us." "Me too." He pulled me into a hug. I let him, feeling the familiar comfort of his arms while simultaneously cataloging every word for later analysis. "Madeline said you're asking for documentation," he said into my hair. "That's good. You should understand everything." "She told you that." "She mentioned it when I called to ask about my quarterly statement. Is that weird?" "Was it?" Advisors talk to their clients. That was normal. Except the timing, the coordination, the way information flowed between them faster than it flowed to me. "Did she tell you what documents I was asking for?" I asked, pulling back slightly. "Just that you wanted to review everything." "Grace, what's going on?" I made a decision. I hired an independent lawyer to review my agreements with Madeline. Justin's face went through several expressions in quick succession: surprise, concern, something else I couldn't identify. "Why?" "Because I don't understand them well enough to know if they're standard or unusual." "You don't trust her?" "I don't trust my own understanding. There's a difference." He was quiet for a moment. "What did the lawyer say?" "That some structures are unusual. That I should verify my assets independently." "Verify them?" "Grace, that sounds like you think she's stealing from you." "I think I should know where my money actually is." Justin ran his hand through his hair, a gesture he made when stressed. "This is going to piss her off. She's very protective of her reputation." "My comfort matters more than her reputation." "Of course it does. He trailed off. "I don't want this to blow up our financial planning. We're so close to having everything aligned." The phrasing struck me. Our financial planning. When had it become ours? "Justin, how much have you and Madeline talked about my accounts?" "I don't know. Normal amounts? She's managing both of us, so coordination makes sense." "But what specifically have you discussed?" "Investment opportunities, tax strategies, the partnership." He was getting defensive. "Why does this feel like an interrogation?" "Because I'm trying to understand how decisions about my money are being made. By your advisor, who you hired, who you've trusted for 4 years. His voice rose slightly. "Grace, if you're going to start questioning everything, maybe you should just fire her and manage it yourself." The suggestion sounded reasonable, but felt like a trap. Like he was calling a bluff he expected me not to follow through on. "Maybe I will," I said quietly. Justin stared at me. "You're serious?" "I'm serious about understanding my own finances. Whether that's with Madeline or someone else or by myself, I haven't decided." "This is going to cost you. Unwinding those structures mid-year, the penalties she mentioned." "How do you know about penalties?" He stopped. "She mentioned them when we were discussing timing for the partnership." "She told you what it would cost me to leave before telling me?" "It wasn't like that. It came up in context." "What context?" "Jesus, Grace. Are you going to analyze every conversation I've ever had with your financial advisor?" "If those conversations were about my money?" "Yes." We stared at each other across the kitchen island, pad thai cooling between us. "I need some air," Justin said finally, grabbing his jacket. "You always need air when conversations get uncomfortable. And you always need to turn normal professional relationships into conspiracies." He paused at the door. "I love you, but I can't keep defending myself against paranoia." He left. I sat alone with the takeout I couldn't eat, wondering if I was paranoid or finally paying attention. The next morning, I called my custodial bank, the institution where Madeline had told me my accounts were held. I need to verify holdings in my account, I told the representative, a woman with a patient voice clearly trained to handle confused clients. I'll need your account number and verbal authorization. I provided both, reading from the quarterly statement Madeline had given me. And what specifically would you like to verify? Everything. I want a complete list of assets, positions, and valuations as of today. I can mail you a statement, but your advisor should be able to provide. I want it directly from you, from the bank, not through my advisor. A pause. That's certainly your right, Ms. Ashford. It'll take 5 to 7 business days for a complete verification. Can you expedite it? For a fee of $150, we can have it to you in 48 hours. Please do that. And would you like this mailed to your address on file? I gave her my home address, then added, Actually, can you send it to my work instead? I provided my office address, not wanting the statement arriving while Justin might be home. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. I went to work and tried to focus on writing marketing copy about ergonomic office chairs. The words felt hollow, meaningless. Who cared about lumbar support when your entire financial foundation might be built on sand? My phone buzzed. Madeline, need to discuss partnership timeline. Can you come in today? I typed back. Busy with work deadlines. Can it wait until next week? Her response came immediately. Enrollment closes Friday. This really can't wait. The pressure was constant, relentless. Every delay framed as missed opportunity. Every question as obstacle to my own benefit. I didn't respond. 10 minutes later, Justin texted. Madeline says you're avoiding her calls. I stared at my phone, trying to understand the chain of communication. Madeline had contacted Justin about me not responding to her. I'm at work, I typed back. Can we talk about this later? She's worried about you missing the deadline. It's my decision and my deadline. I know. Just passing along the message. But it wasn't just passing along a message. It was pressure through proxy, relationship leverage disguised as concern. I turned off my phone. The expedited statement arrived Thursday morning by FedEx. I signed for it at my office, carried it to the conference room, and locked the door. My hands shook as I opened it. The custodial account showed holdings of $847,000. According to Madeline's last quarterly report from October, I should have had $1,340,000. Nearly $500,000 was missing. I read the numbers again, checking and rechecking. Maybe I was reading it wrong. Maybe there were multiple accounts I wasn't seeing, but the bank statement was clear. Account number matching. Madeline's reports. Current holdings, $847,000. I called the bank back. There's a discrepancy, I said, hearing my voice shake. My advisor's reports show different numbers. What discrepancy specifically? She shows holdings you don't have on record, investments I apparently made, but they're not in this statement. The representative asked me to list them. I read off the names: Langley Holdings III, Pembroke Strategic Income Fund, Redmond Capital Partners, 3 others. Ma'am, I don't show any of those positions in your custodial account. Where would they be? I can only speak to what we custody. If your advisor reports holdings elsewhere, those would be in different accounts at different institutions. What different institutions? You'd need to ask your advisor. We only custody what's transferred to us. But these are supposed to be in this account. She shows them in my statements under this account number. A longer pause. I can't speak to what your advisor's statements show. I can only confirm what we hold. If there's a discrepancy, you should contact your advisor to clarify. Or contact a lawyer. The representative's voice became carefully neutral. If you have concerns about account accuracy, you have several options, including requesting an independent audit or filing a complaint with regulatory agencies. I can't advise on which option is appropriate for your situation. I hung up and immediately called Sophia. My custodial statement doesn't match my advisor's reports, I said, without preamble. $500,000 is showing in her reports, but not in the actual bank account. Send me both statements immediately. I'm bringing in a forensic accountant. How fast can they work? If there's fraud, we move fast. I'll have someone look at this by end of day. She paused. Grace, don't confront your advisor yet, and don't tell your boyfriend. Why not? Because if there's coordination between their accounts, his reaction will tell us what we need to know about whether he's a victim or a participant. The word participant felt like being punched. You think he's in on it. I think you need to know the truth before you reveal what you know. Can you act normal for 48 hours? I don't know. Try. Because if you spook them before we understand the structure, they'll have time to cover tracks or move assets. Acting normal was impossible. Justin came home that evening cheerful, carrying flowers and a bottle of wine. Peace offering, he said. I was an ass last night, I'm sorry. It's okay. It's not. He poured wine, handed me a glass. I've been thinking about what you said, about understanding your finances. You're right. You should know everything. Maybe we can sit down this weekend, go through it all together. The offer sounded supportive, but all I could think was, why now? Why after I question things? Maybe, I said. And I talked to Madeline. She said she'd be happy to do a comprehensive review, walk you through every investment, answer every question. No pressure about the partnership, just pure education. You talked to her about this? I called to apologize for you being stressed. She was really understanding, Grace. She wants you to feel comfortable. Every word was reasonable. Every word felt like manipulation. I appreciate that, I managed. We made dinner together, pasta with marinara sauce, moving around the kitchen in practiced choreography. Justin told me about his day, a difficult client, office politics, normal couple conversation. I made appropriate sounds, asked appropriate questions, and felt like I was performing a role in a play where I'd forgotten my lines. You seem distracted, Justin said over dinner. Just tired. Work's been intense. The furniture company still riding you? Yeah? You should set better boundaries. They don't pay you enough to work you this hard. The irony of him advising me about boundaries while coordinating my financial decisions with my advisor wasn't lost on me. After dinner, I claimed I needed to finish a work project and lock myself in our bedroom with my laptop. I opened a new document and started writing down everything I knew. Madeline planned coordination with Justin 3 months before presenting it to me. Forms I don't remember signing appear in my files. Custodial accounts don't match Madeline's reports. Missing. Approximately $493,000. Justin receives information about my accounts, my concerns, my decisions. Pressure always escalates when I question or delay. Looking at it written out, it was either fraud or the most unfortunate series of misunderstandings in financial history. Sophia had told me not to believe in coincidences. The forensic accountant called Friday evening. His name was Harold Redmond, and his voice had the exhausted quality of someone who spent their days examining other people's lies. I've reviewed both statements, he said. The missing assets are real, but they're held in a separate trust account that your advisor controls. What kind of trust? A discretionary trust with her as trustee and you as beneficiary. It's a legitimate estate planning structure. In some contexts. What contexts? When you specifically request that kind of protection. When you understand that the assets are legally owned by the trustee. When you have regular access to accounting and can remove the trustee if needed. I didn't request it. I don't have regular accounting, and I don't know how to remove her. Then it's not legitimate. It's a mechanism to move assets out of your direct control and into hers. My stomach dropped. Can she access the money? As trustee, yes, she has legal authority to manage those assets. The question is whether she has fiduciary obligation to use them in your interest or whether the trust language gives her discretion to use them in ways that benefit her. How do I find out? We need the trust documents, which she's legally required to provide to you as beneficiary. He paused. The problem is, if you request them directly, she'll know you're investigating. So what do I do? You have 3 options. 1, request the documents and risk alerting her. 2, file a complaint with regulatory agencies and let them subpoena the documents. 3, hire an attorney to send a formal demand as part of a legal review. Which do you recommend? Depends on your goal. Do you want your money back? Do you want her prosecuted, or do you just want out? I hadn't thought that far ahead. All 3? Then you need to move carefully. Document everything, file formal complaints, and prepare for a long fight. Sophia and I met Saturday morning at a coffee shop far from my neighborhood. I'd told Justin I was going to yoga, then meeting a friend for brunch. The trust structure is sophisticated, Sophia said, reviewing Harold's analysis. She's using estate planning tools in ways they're not intended. Technically legal on paper, but applied in a way that violates fiduciary duty. Can we prove that? We can prove she moved your assets into a structure you didn't understand and didn't meaningfully consent to. Whether that rises to fraud or just breach of fiduciary duty depends on what else we find. What else could there be? Self-dealing. If she's using your assets to benefit herself or her firm beyond normal fees. If she's investing in vehicles she has ownership interest in. If she's coordinating with your boyfriend in ways that benefit him at your expense. Sophia pulled out a legal pad. We need to map the entire structure, every account, every trust, every investment vehicle. Then we need to trace the money. How long will that take? Weeks, maybe months, unless we can get her records through legal process. You mean sue her? Or file regulatory complaints that trigger official investigation. SEC, State Bar, Financial Regulatory Authorities. Once they're investigating, they can subpoena records faster than we can through civil discovery. I thought about Madeline's perfect office, her smooth explanations, her fortress of trust. Do it, I said. File everything. We filed complaints on Monday. SEC, unauthorized use of client assets, failure to disclose conflicts of interest, creation of undisclosed trust structures. State Bar, potential breach of fiduciary duty, self-dealing, coordination between clients, creating conflicts of interest. Financial Regulatory Board, failure to provide adequate disclosure, misrepresentation of account holdings, unauthorized asset transfers. Each complaint required detailed documentation. I spent hours writing out timelines, providing email evidence, attaching account statements. By Monday evening, the complaints were filed. By Tuesday morning, Madeline knew. She called at 8:47 a.m. I didn't answer. She called again at 9:15, again at 9:43. At 10:20, Justin called. Grace, what the fuck did you do? I'd never heard him this angry. What are you talking about? Madeline just called me. She's been served with regulatory complaints. From you. You filed formal charges against her. I filed inquiries about my accounts. That's not what these are. These are accusations of fraud, Grace. Do you understand what you've done? I understand that $500,000 is missing from my accounts, and I'm trying to find out where it went. It's not missing. It's in protective structure she created. This is exactly what sophisticated planning looks like. His certainty stopped me. How do you know what structures she created? Silence. Justin? She explained it to me when we were planning the partnership coordination. She explained my trust structures to you? In general terms, to show how the partnership would integrate. She showed you details of my estate planning without my permission. Jesus Christ, Grace, we're planning a life together. She was helping us coordinate our financial future. By showing you documents about trusts I don't even know exist? You would know if you paid attention, if you actually engaged with your finances instead of just trusting everyone to handle it for you. The accusation stung because it was partially true. I'm engaging now, I said quietly. By accusing someone of fraud, by filing formal complaints, Grace, she could sue you for defamation. She could come after you for damages. Let her. At least then we'd have discovery. You want discovery? You want this to become public? You want everyone to know you're accusing your advisor of stealing from you? If she is stealing from me, yes, she's not. And you're going to destroy her reputation and maybe ours over paranoid conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories? Justin, there's $500,000 missing from my custodial account. It's not missing, it's repositioned. That's what asset management is. We were both shouting now. Did she tell you to call me? I asked. What? Did Madeline tell you to call me and convince me to drop the complaints? She told me what was happening. I called because I'm worried about you. Because this is fucking insane, Grace. Then help me understand. Explain to me where my money is. Show me these protective structures. Make it make sense. I can't. That's not my account information to share. You need to talk to Madeline. I tried talking to Madeline. Now I'm talking to regulators. Justin was quiet for a long moment. If you go through with this, he said finally, if you actually pursue these complaints, I don't know if we can survive it. Are you threatening to leave me? I'm telling you the truth. I can't be with someone who turns professional disagreement into warfare. This isn't professional disagreement. This is $500,000 I can't account for. Then account for it. Ask Madeline for the trust documents. Request a full accounting. But don't blow up her entire career because you don't understand sophisticated planning. I don't understand it because it's designed to be incomprehensible. Or because you never tried to learn. The words hung between us, sharp and final. I have to go, I said. Grace, I hung up. Sophia called an hour later. The SEC just contacted me. They're opening a formal investigation based on your complaint. They want to interview you next week. That was fast. Your complaint was well documented, and I suspect you're not the first person to complain about her. They were probably already watching. What happens now? They'll investigate. If they find evidence of wrongdoing, they'll file charges. She'll have to respond, provide records, potentially face penalties. How long does that take? Months, maybe longer. But Grace, there's something else. What? Your boyfriend called my office. He wants to know if he needs a lawyer. The implication settled over me like ice water. He thinks he's implicated. Or he knows he's implicated, which raises questions about what he knows and when he knew it. Justin didn't come home Tuesday night. He texted at 11 p.m., staying at a hotel, need space to think. I typed and deleted 5 responses before settling on. Okay. I lay awake in our bed, looking at the ceiling, trying to understand how asking questions about my own money had led to my relationship imploding. Or maybe it hadn't been the questions. Maybe it had been the answers. Wednesday, I went back to work and tried to maintain normalcy. Writing marketing copy felt absurd. Who cared about furniture when your entire life was unraveling? But it was something to do besides sitting in my apartment, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. My phone buzzed constantly. Unknown numbers, Madeline's office. Once, a number that might have been Madeline's. Personal cell. I didn't answer any of them. Sophia had told me. Once you file, the only conversation is through lawyers. Thursday afternoon, a courier delivered a thick envelope to my office. Inside was a letter from Madeline's attorneys. Dear Ms. Ashford, our client, Madeline Caldwell, has received notice of complaints filed with multiple regulatory agencies. These complaints contain serious allegations that are both false and damaging to our client's professional reputation. Our client categorically denies any wrongdoing. All actions taken regarding your accounts were done with your full knowledge and authorization, pursuant to signed agreements and established fiduciary protocols. The trusts and structures referenced in your complaints were created at your request for estate planning and asset protection purposes. The discrepancies you claim exist between custodial statements and managed assets reflect your misunderstanding of multi-account structures, not any misappropriation. We are prepared to provide complete documentation demonstrating that 1. All actions were authorized by signed documents. 2. All assets remain intact and accessible. 3. All fee structures were properly disclosed. 4. All coordination with other clients, including Mr. McIntyre, was done at your explicit request for integrated financial planning. However, we are also prepared to pursue legal action if these complaints are not withdrawn. The damage to our client's reputation constitutes defamation, and your actions may constitute tortious interference with her business relationships. We strongly advise you to retain counsel and reconsider this course of action. Should you wish to discuss resolution, please have your attorney contact our office. Sincerely, Camille Grayson, Esquire. Grayson and Whitfield, LLPI, forwarded it to Sophia without comment. She called 5 minutes later. This is a standard intimidation letter. Ignore it. They're threatening to sue me. They're hoping you'll panic and withdraw the complaints. That's not the same as actually suing. She paused. Though they might. If they do, we defend it, and we countersue. For what? Breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, misrepresentation, unauthorized use of client assets. If they want to make this a legal fight, we'll fight. I don't want to fight. I just want my money back. I know, but sometimes getting your money back requires fighting. Friday, the SEC investigator called. Her name was Caroline Ashford, no relation, she assured me quickly, and she sounded efficient, skeptical, and exhausted. I've reviewed your complaint, she said. I need to interview you in person. Can you come to our office Monday at 2 p.m.? Yes. Bring any documentation you haven't already provided. Account statements, contracts, communications, everything. I will. Ms. Ashford, I need to be clear about something. Filing a false complaint with the SEC is a serious matter. If we determine your allegations are baseless or made in bad faith, there could be consequences. I understand. Good. See you Monday. I spent the weekend organizing documents. Every email from Madeline, every contract I'd signed, every statement, both from her and from the custodial bank. Every text message with Justin that referenced finances. I created a timeline, mapping when I'd signed documents against when I was likely to have been distracted or vulnerable. The pattern was clear. June 12th, when Justin's mother was diagnosed. September 3rd, when I had the flu. October 19th, the day after my sister called to say her marriage was ending. Every major authorization had been signed during a crisis. Maybe that was coincidence, or maybe it was strategy. Justin texted Sunday night. Can we talk? Yes, I replied. He came over at 9 p.m. looking exhausted. We sat at opposite ends of the couch, the distance between us, geographical and emotional. I talked to a lawyer, he said. Okay. He said I need to cooperate with the SEC investigation, that if there's fraud, my account could be evidence. Do you think there's fraud? He was quiet for a long time. I don't know, he said finally. I thought I knew Madeline. I thought she was brilliant, strategic, someone who saw opportunities other advisors missed. But now, he trailed off. Now? Now I'm looking at the timeline of our conversations, and I'm seeing patterns I didn't see before. How she'd ask about you when I came in for my own reviews. How she'd mention opportunities that just happened to align with your trust distributions. How she always knew when you were stressed or distracted. She told you when I was stressed? Sometimes, in the context of suggesting we wait to discuss certain things until you were less overwhelmed. He looked at me. I thought she was being considerate. Now I think maybe she was managing us. Did she ever ask you to pressure me? Not directly, but she'd say things like, Grace is hesitant about this opportunity, or it would really benefit Grace if she could decide quickly, and I'd mention it to you. Casually, thinking I was helping. You were doing what she wanted you to do. I think so. Yeah. He put his head in his hands. Grace, I'm so sorry. I thought we were building our future together. I didn't realize I was being used to manipulate you. The apology felt genuine, but it didn't change what had happened. Did you benefit financially from the coordination? I asked. I don't think so. My returns were good, but I assumed that was just her skill. He looked up. Do you think I benefited? I don't know. That's what the investigation will determine. Jesus, this is so fucked up. We sat in silence. Are we going to survive this? He asked finally. I don't know that either. Do you want to? I thought about 3 years together, about trust and love and the way they'd become entangled with money and planning and structures I didn't understand. I want to survive this, I said carefully. Whether we survive it together, I need to know if you were a victim or a participant first. That's fair, he said quietly. Then, for what it's worth, I think I was a victim, but I understand you can't just take my word for it. He left at midnight. I didn't sleep. The SEC interview Monday was in a gray office building in the Federal District. Caroline Ashford met me in a small conference room with a recording device and a legal pad. This is a voluntary interview, she said. You can leave any time, but the information you provide will be part of the official investigation. I understand. She started the recorder. Tell me how you met Madeline Caldwell. I walked through everything. My father's death, the friend who referred me, the early years that seemed legitimate, the gradual complexity, the coordination with Justin, the missing money. Caroline took notes occasionally, stopping me to ask for clarification. These forms you say you don't remember signing. Do you have copies? Yes. I pulled them from my folder. She examined each one. And your signature is genuine? Yes. I'm not claiming she forged them. I'm saying I was distracted or stressed when I signed them, and she chose those moments deliberately. That's harder to prove. I know, but the pattern is clear. She made a note. Tell me about the trust structure, the one holding the missing assets. I don't know anything about it. I only learned it existed when the forensic accountant found it. You never requested a discretionary trust? No. Never discussed estate planning structures that would move assets out of your direct control. No. Madeline talked about protection and tax efficiency, but never explained it meant she'd legally own my assets. Caroline leaned back. Ms. Ashford, I'm going to be frank with you. What you're describing could be sophisticated fraud, or it could be aggressive but legal estate planning that you didn't understand. The difference comes down to intent and disclosure. What kind of disclosure? Did she explain that the trust meant she'd have legal ownership? Did she explain that you'd lose direct control? Did she explain the specific tax benefits versus the risks? No, she used words like sophisticated and protective, but never explained the actual mechanics. Did you ask? The question stung. Not enough. I trusted her expertise. That's not a crime on your part, but it makes fraud harder to prove on hers. Caroline checked her notes. Here's what I can tell you. We're going to subpoena her records. We're going to examine the trust documents, the fee structures, the investment vehicles. If we find self-dealing or undisclosed conflicts, we can pursue charges. And if you don't, then it's a civil matter. Breach of fiduciary duty, not criminal fraud. You could sue, but you wouldn't get criminal prosecution. What about the other clients? Justin mentioned she might have done this to others. If they exist, we'll find them. Often once we start investigating, other victims come forward. So what do I do now? Wait, let us work. And Ms. Ashford? She softened slightly. Get a good lawyer. Even if this is fraud, recovering your assets will be complicated. I walked out of the federal building into cold November air, feeling more lost than when I'd entered. Sophia called as I was getting into my car. How did it go? I don't know. She's investigating, but made it clear proving fraud is hard. It always is. That's why sophisticated fraudsters use legal structures. They stay just inside the lines. So what do? We file a civil suit. We don't wait for the SEC. We go after her directly for breach of fiduciary duty and demand a full accounting. When? This week. I'm drafting the complaint now. The lawsuit was filed Wednesday. Grace Ashford versus Madeline Caldwell and Caldwell Advisory Services. Causes of action: breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, constructive fraud, conversion, negligent misrepresentation. We demanded full accounting of all assets, return of all assets to my direct control. Damages for lost opportunity and emotional distress. Attorney's fees. Punitive damages. Madeline's attorneys filed a response within days. They claimed everything was authorized, everything was disclosed, and I was a sophisticated client who'd made informed decisions that I now regretted. They filed a countersuit, defamation, breach of contract, for the NDA implications they claimed. Abuse of process. They sought $2 million in damages. Sophia laughed when she read it. This is good. How is being countersued for $2 million good? Because it means discovery. We get to depose her. We get to subpoena her firm's records. We get to examine every client agreement, every trust document, every email. If she's doing what we think she's doing, we'll find evidence. And if we don't, then we're wrong. But I don't think we're wrong. Discovery began in December. We subpoenaed Madeline's complete client files for the past 5 years. Her attorneys fought it, claiming attorney-client privilege and business confidentiality. The judge ordered limited production, organizational documents, fee agreements, general investment structures, with personal information redacted. What we received was still revealing. Madeline's firm operated with her as sole principal, but there were multiple LLC structures underneath. Different entities for different services, all feeding back to her control. The fee structures varied by client, but a pattern emerged. Young women, inherited wealth, family trauma, and always the fees increased over time. Starting at 1%, growing to 1.5%, then 2%, then, in some cases, 3% plus performance fees. She targets vulnerability, Sophia said, reviewing the documents. That's the pattern, not stupid people, vulnerable ones. How many? At least 12 clients with similar profiles to yours. Maybe more in the redacted sections. We should contact them. We can't. Attorney-client privilege still applies to their information, but if they see news coverage of your case, they might contact us. Justin moved out completely in January. Not dramatically, just quietly, taking his things while I was at work, leaving his key on the kitchen counter with a note. Grace, I can't be in the middle of this anymore. My lawyer says I need to distance myself from both you and Madeline until the investigation is complete. I love you. I hope you know that. but I can't watch you tear apart your life and possibly mine over something I still don't understand. If you're right about Madeline, I'm sorry I didn't see it. If you're wrong, I'm sorry you couldn't trust the people trying to help you. Either way, I need space. J.I. read it 3 times, then filed it with the other documents for the lawsuit. Evidence of pressure, evidence of coordination, evidence of how thoroughly Madeline had infiltrated my life. The SEC investigation expanded in February. 2 other clients came forward with similar stories. One was a woman named Alexis, 26, who'd inherited money from her grandparents. She'd hired Madeline 3 years ago and gradually watched her account statements become incomprehensible. The other was Tessa, 34, whose husband had died leaving her life insurance and a business to sell. Madeline had helped her structure the sale, and Tessa had spent the last year trying to understand where the proceeds went. Both had complaints similar to mine. Complex structures they didn't understand, assets moved to accounts they couldn't access, pressure to make quick decisions, consequences threatened for delay. The pattern was unmistakable. Sophia filed a motion to consolidate the cases, creating a class action. Madeline's attorneys fought it viciously. The judge allowed limited consolidation. The 3 of us could share discovery and coordinate legal strategies, but we'd maintain separate claims. Good enough. Madeline's deposition was scheduled for March. I wanted to attend, but Sophia advised against it. "You'll just make yourself upset. Let me handle it." But she called me afterward, her voice tight with controlled fury. "She's sticking to her story. Everything was disclosed. Everything was authorized. The clients who don't understand their own finances aren't her problem." "Did she explain the trust structure?" "She claims you requested it. She has notes from a meeting in May 2023 where she says you expressed concern about creditor protection and asked for maximum shielding of assets. That meeting never happened. Can you prove it?" "I was in Portland visiting my sister in May 2023. I have plane tickets, photos, my sister's testimony." "Then we have her. She just perjured herself in a deposition." We filed the perjury evidence in April. The case shifted. Madeline's attorneys became less aggressive, more defensive. They started making settlement offers. First offer, she'd return the assets to my direct control. I'd drop the lawsuit. We'd both sign NDAs. We declined. Second offer, she'd return the assets, pay a nominal penalty for miscommunication. I'd agree not to pursue criminal charges. We declined. Third offer, she'd admit no wrongdoing, but would retire from financial advisory services, dissolve her firm, and return all client assets to direct control. "That's a real offer," Sophia said. "She's trying to avoid criminal prosecution." "What about the other clients?" "They'd be included. Everyone gets their money back." "And she just walks away?" "She loses her career, her firm, her reputation. That's not nothing." "It's not enough." "Grace, revenge isn't a legal remedy." "This isn't revenge. It's consequence." Sophia studied me. "What do you want?" "I want her prosecuted. I want a public record of what she did. I want other women to know what happened so they don't fall for it. That means rejecting the settlement. That means going to trial. That means publicity, stress, maybe losing. I'll risk it." We rejected the third offer. The case went to trial in June. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Less dramatic, just a judge, a jury, lawyers making arguments about documents and intent. Madeline looked diminished without her corner office and glass desk. Still impeccably dressed, but the architectural precision had become rigidity. Every movement calculated, defensive. The prosecution called me first. I testified for 2 days. Madeline's attorney, Camille Grayson, cross-examined me aggressively. "Ms. Ashford, you have a college degree, correct?" "Yes." "From a good school?" "Yes." You work in marketing, crafted persuasive communications? Yes. So you're not stupid? No. Yet you claim you signed documents without understanding them. I signed documents I was told were standard during times when I was dealing with family crises. Family crises that Ms. Caldwell had no way of knowing about? She knew, Justin told her. So you're claiming Mr. McIntyre was part of a conspiracy? I'm claiming information flowed from me to Justin to Madeline, and she used it strategically. Or Mr. McIntyre mentioned in casual conversation that you were stressed, and Ms. Caldwell acted professionally by giving you space? That's one interpretation. But you prefer the interpretation where everyone was conspiring against you? I prefer the interpretation supported by evidence. The cross-examination went on for hours, every answer dissected, every decision questioned, every moment of trust framed as willful ignorance. By the end, I felt raw. But Sophia's redirect was surgical. Ms. Ashford, when you hired Madeline Caldwell, what did you want? Someone to help me manage my inheritance responsibly. Did you want someone to take control of your assets? No. Did you want someone to move your money into accounts you couldn't access? No. Did you understand that sophisticated planning meant you'd lose legal ownership? No, I thought it meant protection, insurance against mistakes. Did Ms. Caldwell ever explain that the trust structure meant she would own your assets? Never. Not once. Not in any meeting, any document, any conversation. Thank you, Ms. Ashford. The forensic accountant testified next, walking the jury through the trust structures, the fee escalations, the movement of assets from custodial accounts to Madeline's control. In your professional opinion, would a sophisticated client understand these structures from the documents they were given? No. Even financial professionals would struggle with this level of complexity. That's by design. By design? The opacity serves a purpose. It makes oversight difficult. Madeline's attorney objected. The judge sustained, but the jury had heard it. Alexis and Tessa testified. Their stories mirrored mine. Trust, complexity, pressure, loss of control. She made me feel stupid for asking questions, Alexis said. Like understanding my own money was presumptuous. She said smart people trust experts, Tessa added. That trying to understand everything meant I didn't really trust her. The pattern was undeniable. Madeline testified last. She was composed, professional, every answer carefully calibrated. I provided sophisticated financial services to sophisticated clients. If they didn't understand the structures, they should have asked more questions. Did you ever discourage questions? The prosecutor asked. I encouraged education, but I also provided expert guidance. That's what they hired me for. Did you explain that the discretionary trust meant you would legally own their assets? I explained the benefits of the structure. Asset protection, tax efficiency, creditor shielding. But did you explain that they would lose direct control? Loss of control is inherent in sophisticated planning. That's the point. So you did explain it. It's explained in the documents. Did you verbally explain it? I don't recall specific conversations from years ago. You don't recall whether you told clients they'd be signing away legal ownership of their assets. I recall explaining protective structures. The details are in the documentation. The prosecutor pulled out Madeline's own notes from my allegedly non-existent May 2023 meeting. These notes suggest you discussed my client's concerns about creditor protection in May 2023. Is that correct? Yes? My client was in Portland in May 2023. Here are plane tickets, here are time-stamped photos. This meeting never happened. Madeline paled. I may have misstated my notes, or invented them. I may have confused meetings, or lied under oath. Madeline's attorney objected, but the damage was done. The jury deliberated for 3 days. I sat in the courthouse cafeteria, drinking bad coffee, trying not to think about the possibility of losing. Sophia kept saying we had a strong case, but strong cases lost sometimes. The verdict came back on Friday afternoon, guilty on all counts. The jury found that Madeline had breached her fiduciary duty, committed fraud, and deliberately constructed complex structures designed to obscure her control over client assets. They awarded damages, full return of all assets, plus $200,000 in compensatory damages, plus $1.5 million in punitive damages to be split among the 3 plaintiffs. The judge scheduled sentencing for August. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered. I made a brief statement written by Sophia. This case was never about revenge. It was about accountability. Financial advisors hold enormous power over vulnerable people. When they abuse that power, there must be consequences. I hope this verdict sends a message that complexity is not the same as legitimacy, and trust is not the same as informed consent. The statement ran in every major financial publication. Isabel Langley, the journalist who'd been covering the story, wrote a comprehensive piece. Fortress of Trust: How a Bay Area Advisor Used Complexity as a Weapon. It detailed the case, the pattern across clients, the regulatory failures that had allowed Madeline to operate for years. It sparked conversations about fiduciary duty, about financial literacy, about how the industry protected sophisticated fraudsters better than vulnerable clients. 3 more victims contacted Sophia after the article ran. Sentencing was in August. The judge was Fiona Beaumont, a woman in her 60s with a reputation for being tough but fair. She listened to impact statements from all 6 victims, now part of the expanded case. When it was my turn, I said, Madeline Caldwell didn't steal from me because I was stupid. She stole from me because I trusted her expertise during a vulnerable time. She used my father's death, my grief, my desire to be responsible. She used all of it as leverage. That's not a failure on my part. That's predation on hers. And I want the court to understand. This isn't about one bad advisor. This is about a system that rewards complexity over clarity, that protects professionals over clients, that makes victims feel responsible for their own exploitation. Judge Beaumont made notes throughout. When Madeline's attorney asked for leniency, citing her previously unblemished record, her cooperation with asset return, the stress of public scrutiny, the judge cut him off. Ms. Caldwell had every advantage: education, credentials, the trust of clients who came to her in vulnerable moments. She used those advantages systematically to exploit people who believed in her. That's not an error in judgment. That's predation disguised as professionalism. She sentenced Madeline to 4 years in federal prison and ordered her to pay $2.8 million in restitution across all victims. She also permanently barred Madeline from providing any financial services, even informally. I felt nothing when the sentence was read. No triumph, no vindication, just the quiet recognition that it was over, almost. The restitution came through in September. I received $847,000, my original custodial holdings, plus the $493,000 that had been in the trust structure, plus my share of damages. After legal fees, I had approximately $1.1 million. Less than I'd started with 4 years ago, but more importantly, I understood every dollar. I donated $200,000 to a financial literacy nonprofit. The rest I invested in simple, transparent vehicles I could explain to anyone who asked. I expanded my blog into a comprehensive educational platform called Clear Ground. The name came from Sophia, who said, "The opposite of being in over your head is standing on solid footing. Clear Ground provided guides for vetting financial advisors, templates for asking about fees and structures, red flags for predatory advisory relationships, legal resources for victims, community support. I hired 2 other victims from the case to help run it. We built it slowly, carefully, making sure everything we published was accurate and actionable. Justin reached out in November. I heard about the verdict. I'm glad you won. I've been in therapy, trying to understand how I got used in all of this. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I'm sorry I pressured you. I hope you're doing okay. I wrote back, thank you. I'm doing better. I'm glad you're in therapy. I think we both got manipulated. Understanding that helps. We texted occasionally after that. Friendly but distant. 2 people who'd survived something together but couldn't go back to what they'd been before. I met Owen in January at a financial literacy workshop I was teaching. He was a high school math teacher, there to learn how to help his students avoid predatory financial products. After the workshop, he approached me. That was really helpful. The way you explained red flags, it's going to help a lot of kids. That's the goal. Can I buy you coffee? I'd love to hear more about how you developed this framework. We talked for 3 hours. He asked good questions, listened carefully, didn't offer unsolicited advice or try to fix anything. A week later, he asked me to dinner. I said yes. Dating Owen was different. He knew about Madeline from the news coverage, but he didn't treat me like damaged goods. He asked about my finances the way he'd ask about my work, as a fact of my life, not a defining characteristic. When I showed him my portfolio 6 months in, he looked at it and said, I don't understand most of this, but I trust that you do. How do you know I do? Because you can explain it. That's the difference between understanding and bullshit. I fell in love with him slowly, carefully, making sure I was choosing it and not just falling into it. Madeline sent a letter from prison in March. Sophia called to warn me before I opened it. You don't have to read it. I know, but I did. Grace, I've had time to think about everything that happened, about the choices I made and the harm they caused. I believed I was helping. I believed the structures I created were protective, that my expertise justified the control I took. I see now that belief doesn't excuse impact, that my intentions don't erase your experience. I hurt you and others. I use trust as a tool and complexity as a shield. I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to believe this apology is genuine. I just wanted you to hear it. Madeline, I read it 3 times. Then I put it in a file drawer without responding. Not because I was angry, because there was nothing to say. An apology doesn't undo damage. An acknowledgement doesn't create obligation. Clear Ground's traffic grew steadily through spring. We published case studies, legal analysis, interviews with reformed financial advisors who explained industry practices. We partnered with women's organizations, inheritance support groups, financial literacy programs. We trained peer counselors to help people assess their financial relationships. Most importantly, we built a community of people who'd been through it and people who wanted to avoid it. Owen and I moved in together in June. Not because it was time or because it made financial sense, but because we wanted to. You're sure? He asked when we signed the lease. I'm sure. And if I'm not sure later, I'll tell you. That's what I love about you. What? You're honest about uncertainty. Most people pretend to be sure when they're not. I gave a talk at a women's financial conference in September. 200 people in a hotel ballroom, mostly young professionals managing inherited wealth or family money. I'm not going to tell you to trust no one, I said. That's not realistic. You need expertise you don't have. That's normal. What I'm going to tell you is, learn to recognize when trust is being weaponized, when questions are deflected instead of answered, when complexity increases your dependence instead of your security, when your role in your own financial life is shrinking instead of growing. And I'm going to tell you that anger, when you feel manipulated, when you feel controlled, when you feel trapped, anger is information, not pathology, information. Listen to it. The applause was sustained. Afterward, 23 women approached me privately to share their own stories. I'm 33 now. I manage my own finances with guidance from Serena Pembroke, an advisor I trust because I understand everything she recommends. I run Clear Ground full-time. I live with Owen in a house we chose together. I sleep at night. I'm still angry sometimes. At Madeline, at the system that enabled her, at how long it took for anyone to listen. But the anger doesn't consume me. It informs me. It reminds me that protection and control can look identical until you try to leave. That trust without understanding is vulnerability. That questions aren't signs of weakness. They're demonstrations of strength. Madeline becomes eligible for parole next year. I received notification asking if I wanted to submit a victim impact statement. I wrote, Madeline Caldwell is skilled at presenting herself as trustworthy. She will likely serve her sentence with good behavior and appear reformed. I don't know if that reform is genuine. What I know is that she demonstrated extraordinary ability to exploit trust, create complex systems that benefit her while appearing to benefit others, and adapt her methods when challenged. I believe she remains a risk to vulnerable people who might trust her expertise. I don't advocate for permanent incarceration. I advocate for permanent vigilance. Someone asked me recently what I want people to learn from my story. I said, I want them to learn that survival isn't the same as healing, that anger is information, and that silence protects predators more than victims. And I want them to learn that you don't have to forgive people who hurt you. You don't have to make peace with injustice. You don't have to turn trauma into lessons that benefit anyone except you. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to let your damage be someone else's redemption story. Clear Ground published its annual report last month. We've helped 1,247 people assess their financial relationships. We've connected 503 people with vetted advisors. We've supported 67 people through complaints against predatory advisors. We've contributed to legislative changes in 8 states. The numbers feel small and enormous at the same time. Small because there are still thousands of people being exploited. Enormous because each number represents a person who didn't have to learn the way I did. I don't think about Madeline much anymore. She was a lesson, not an identity. And I learned it. What I think about is the architecture of trust. How it can be built to protect or to trap. How complexity can shield or suffocate. How the same words, help, protection, guidance, can mean such different things depending on who's speaking and what they want. I think about how I trusted Madeline because trusting seemed like the responsible thing to do. How that trust became the weapon she used against me. And I think about how I'm building different trust now. Trust that grows my competence instead of my dependence. Trust that answers questions instead of deflecting them. Trust that makes me more capable, not more vulnerable. Owen proposed last month. We were hiking in Point Reyes, and he stopped at an overlook where you could see the entire coast. I want to marry you, he said. Not because it's time or because it makes sense, but because I love who you are, the clear-eyed version of you that knows what she wants and asks for it. Are you sure? I asked. Completely. Are you? I thought about Justin, about how I'd said yes before, because trust meant not questioning. Yes, I said. and I know exactly why. We're getting married next spring. Small ceremony, people we actually know, clear commitments we both understand. No fortress of tradition, just solid ground. And that's what I'm building now. Not safety from all harm, that's impossible, but clarity about what I'm standing on. Understanding of what I've built and what I'm building. Competence to recognize when something's wrong. Courage to ask questions even when they're uncomfortable. And anger that's information, not poison. Sometimes people ask if I regret the years with Madeline, if I wish I could go back and never hire her. I say no. Because the alternative isn't safety. The alternative is a different kind of vulnerability. The vulnerability of someone who never learned to recognize predation, who never developed the literacy to protect herself, who never understood that trust requires verification, that help requires comprehension, that protection requires agency. I learned those things the expensive way, through damage and litigation and nights alone, wondering if I was paranoid or finally paying attention. But I learned them, and now I'm teaching them to women who inherited wealth they didn't ask for, to women managing money after loss, to women who trusted someone and discovered too late that trust was being weaponized. This is the work now, not revenge, not even justice. Exactly, just consequence and education, and the slow, deliberate construction of solid ground where others can stand without being trapped. Madeline built me a fortress. I tore it down. Now I'm building something better, something I can see, something I understand, something that protects me because I built it, not because someone else locked the doors. That's freedom, not the absence of harm, but the presence of clarity. The ability to see what's being built around you and decide if it's protection or prison. The literacy to ask questions and understand answers. The courage to trust, not blindly but with eyes wide open. And when I look back at the woman I was 4 years ago, sitting in Madeline's office, saying, "Whatever you think is best," I don't judge her. She was trying to be responsible. She was trying to trust expertise. She was trying to do the right thing. She just hadn't learned yet that doing the right thing requires understanding what you're doing. Now I understand, and that understanding is worth everything I paid for it.